Eventually I was throwing £80 at a time onto the game 3 or 4 times into one night. And eventually, a few weeks before my exams, the moment came where the money just ran out. I was doing it secretly. I'd be going into shops and buying vouchers, redeeming them and hiding them in my room so that my parents wouldn't know how much I was spending.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Coming home from school where only a couple of my closest friends knew any level of what I was dealing with, the buzz of opening packs would give me a way to cope and to forget and just to feel in some way happy. I don't think I've ever been addicted to video games, but I was addicted to the buzz of chance every time that I spent money on those packs. I hope that in years to come, people will look back and just question how this was ever allowed to happen.
This is Jonathan Pennycat, a teenager from the UK who spent nearly £3,000 on Ultimate Team packs in 2017. Growing up, Jonathan would casually drop £15 here, £20 there on packs, constantly seeking a buzz that would only come on very rare occasions. In the aforementioned year, Jonathan's mum was diagnosed with cancer, and with his newly purchased debit card, he looked to Ultimate Team and packs as a way to cope with the stress. Weeks before his final exams, the money ran out. All £3,000 that had been gifted to him as savings for the future had slid its way into the hands of EA's pockets. Jonathan's story is not one that stands alone in the world of FIFA, and certainly not in the world of gaming. In 2019, a RuneScape player managed to spend $62,000 on the game. Earlier this year, a CEO of an unnamed company spent £13,000 in 3 years in Ultimate Team and has filed a complaint against EA. And in 2015, a 15-year-old spent $25,000 on CSGO. These headlines are becoming more and more common in today's media, and whilst this is an industry-wide problem, I want to focus on FIFA, how it encourages gambling, and how much of its community blindly ignores it and buys the game anyway. This hasn't always been the case, of course. When Ultimate Team was introduced to FIFA in 2008 with FIFA 09, players were unable to use their wallet to purchase packs. This continued until FIFA 13 when EA presented us with FIFA Points, a method of purchasing packs with real money. This came at a time when microtransactions were trickling their way into the market as games began to get more expensive to produce and large AAA companies started to copy the mobile gaming market. Over time, more and more games included these optional purchases. Call of Duty in 2014, Halo in 2015, and Grand Theft Auto in 2013. Since then, nearly every company has jumped on the trend, chasing the easy financial games that come with it. In 2019, Activision Blizzard generated $3.36 billion from microtransactions. For EA, it was $2.813 billion, and companies such as Epic Games, Riot Games, and Take-Two Interactive all received more than $1 billion. The bottom line? Microtransactions are a gigantic income for gaming companies, and this is why it's borderline impossible to reason with them.
Do you consider loot boxes to be an ethical feature of your games? Kelly?
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
Okay, so just to be absolutely clear, your loot boxes or surprise mechanics, you have no ethical qualms whatsoever with.
So I think you're recharacterizing my language. What I said is I think the way we've implemented our FIFA Ultimate Team packs is ethical.
Okay, other than FIFA and other games.
Today, microtransactions are not as intrusive as they were a few years ago. A lot of this can be credited to how EA screwed up Star Wars Battlefront 2. The controversy surrounding that game was so enormous that it made headlines outside of the gaming world and forced a rethink for the industry. It was the tipping point for many gamers, and today most games only sell cosmetic items, items that don't affect gameplay, or allow players to buy specific items instead of opening a loot box. Hiding behind its casual sporting market, EA and FIFA have managed to evade much of the heat surrounding loot boxes. So far this year, over 27% of EA's income has come from all forms of Ultimate Team, spanning FIFA, Madden and NHL. Understandably, this leads to a focus on improving these game modes at the cost of other game modes that don't generate any income. In recent years, career mode and pro clubs have been left in the dust by EA, with Ultimate Team bearing frequent improvements and additions. Of course, any enhancements are worthless if you don't market your product, and for EA, this is no issue. Being an official FIFA licensed product and sponsored by many clubs, leagues and players, FIFA's market and reach is absolutely gigantic. Effectively, anyone with an interest in football and has access to a television and games console will consider purchasing FIFA. I'm not having a go at some of these organizations or influencers who sell FIFA for EA, but it's just some perspective on how massive the franchise is. The Ultimate Team mode itself promotes purchasing packs through its structure and progression. Ultimate Team is a grind mode where players play match after match to improve their squad bit by bit. Rare players are exceptionally rare, common rewards are pretty average, and packs are always an option to boost your chances and climb that ladder faster. The idea of earning rewards from a random number generator is unfair and anti-consumer, loot box or no loot box involvement. Pack opening animations are flashy, with confetti, gold trims, and are presented to you in order to collect every drop of dopamine possible, so you can go buy another and experience the high all over again. Like any addiction, you will chase a greater high until you end up like Jonathan, with an empty bank account and nothing but misery to show for it. EA will argue that microtransactions are optional, but it's clear to see that they do everything in their power to encourage purchases. They constantly advertise promos, new cards available for a limited time only, that are old cards with slight number variations. Of the 25,034 cards in FIFA 20, just under 15% of the cards were variations. With no variations, players would simply buy their team and be done with the game. But EA gives players reasons to keep on spending money on the illusion of progression. And that illusion is one that seemingly sustains Ultimate Team's gigantic player base. Every year is a reset, and there's nothing more fun than grinding something from the beginning. There's so much positivity and hope surrounding a new FIFA launch. Hope that this will be the year you assemble that perfect team and get hooked into its grinding mechanics once again. Don't get me wrong, I love grinding mechanics. They give you goals to reach and give players good reasons to maintain a presence on the game. Yet, when there is a cop-out, a way to skip the grind and gain that instant gratification, interestingly enough, it's initially not too appetizing. The grind is the gameplay, so why would you want to reach your destination without the fun journey? However, after you play game after game and come up against more and more people with heavy wallets to splash on their squad, the grind becomes more of a chore. Suddenly, instant gratification seems more appealing because you realize this grind is unfair and very pay to win. It doesn't help that FIFA's gameplay is unsurprisingly infuriating to experience, But you knew that anyway when you bought the game, because let's face it, you bought last year's game too. And it's this blind routine that is helping EA release very average and passive FIFA games year after year. There is no real competition, there is no incentive to improve or innovate because the audience remains. That audience is mostly casual. Players who have a low gaming interest and buy FIFA because they enjoy football. They're an audience who won't check out what new features FIFA 21 has to offer, or read Reddit posts on how EA advertise gambling to children in a toy magazine because they're too busy watching the likes of Castro, Mini Minter and AA9 Skills open packs. Search the word FIFA on YouTube and you will be bombarded with over-the-top thumbnails, all caps titles and Photoshop pictures of these idiots reacting to virtual cards over and over and over again. As a YouTuber, I'm not going to comment on the content that these guys produce. It's their channel, so if they want to devote it to FIFA, then go ahead. But seriously, these guys will be the first to complain about scripting, imbalance issues, and that EA is the worst company in the world. Only to, in Bateson's case, drop £20,000 on the game at launch. Imagine watching these guys as a kid, and you see the amount of money they're brown enveloping into EA's pockets, and you're sat there with your 80 overall Premier League team and a lone Mbappe. You'd have certainly made up your plans for your Christmas present. Some of these YouTubers epitomise everything wrong with the FIFA community. The pure hypocrisy of complaining about the same shitty game year after year whilst churning out these videos and dropping thousands of pounds into what effectively is a Panini sticker album on steroids is something that absolutely infuriates me. And your first response will be, well, it's working for them. And that's it. That's our problem. Millions of people are delighted to soak up this content, and it's become normal to spend money on packs that will be worthless 9 months down the line. You may argue that FIFA is harmless entertainment, that it's the gaming equivalent of Love Island or any other reality TV show, not to be taken seriously and not something that has any sort of impact. Unfortunately, FIFA is so morally corrupt that I cannot take this viewpoint. It's so gigantic that its influence is a lot bigger than you might think, and I can't accept something that actively promotes gambling having such an effect on so many people. Whilst I can sit here and rant to you for ages on the morality of EA and the FIFA community, the reality is that with regards to gambling, the solution is a lot more political. And I'm not political. And of course, this is something that each country has to figure out for themselves. Belgium was the first to do so. Instead of boring you with the different regulations and rules surrounding what EA is and isn't doing, I thought I'd instead highlight how big a problem this actually is. In a study looking at Steam's most played games between 2010 and 2019, the presence of loot boxes had increased from just 4% to 71%. Purchases of specific microtransactions rose from 8% to 86%. In the UK, 93% of 10 to 16 year olds play computer games. 2% of 11 to 16 year olds are considered problem gamblers. Before we continue, let's calculate how many children that actually is. According to survey data from 2018, there are 4,457,222 children aged between 11 and 16 living in the UK. 2% of that number is approximately 89,144 children, all of whom are problem gamblers. That number is absolutely astounding. To make matters worse, in 2019 the UK Gambling Commission found that 22.9% of 11 to 16 year olds have paid to open loot boxes. That is over 1 million children in the UK. This is absolutely not healthy, and it gets even worse if you expand into general gambling. 1 in 2 17-year-olds currently living in the UK are participating in some form of gambling activity. A separate survey revealed that up to 450,000 children between the ages of 11 and 16 are regular bettors. This figure is larger than the number of children in the same age group who drink, smoke, and use drugs. What we have then is a rising number of young people and children who are growing up as gamblers, the overwhelming majority of which play video games. Factor in how popular football is in the UK, and the recipe is there for more stories like Jonathan's to emerge in the years to come. This really makes me sad because I enjoy video games for so many reasons, and to see it be infected by this money-hungry trend has made me very angry. It's typical of the market today, however, packed with stale and lackluster titles that are 5% better than last year's average entry, feeding you the same crap year after year. FIFA is a shell of its former self, loot boxes aside, and this can be said for many titles that have immaturely chased the allure of easy financial gains at the expense of consumer happiness. Don't get me wrong, the industry is changing for the better, but sadly FIFA and other copy and paste franchises are still stuck in 2013. But I say, fuck them. For every FIFA, there is another 9 out of 10 gem out there waiting to be discovered and enjoyed for years down the line. Use your brain, don't gamble, and stop buying the same shit games every year.